So much. We are so honored and thrilled to have Libby Ludlow Dudek join us this evening. We asked her tonight to help us kick off 2022 with some goal setting, and she is an expert in that field. She is a certified life coach, a goal setting expert, a former Olympian, 10-year US ski team alum, and a writer. She is the author of 2 amazing children's books, AB Skis and Goodnight Chairlift. And she's also a mother of 2 young children herself. So she is what all of us moms out there are, which is juggling all the things that we love to do and are passionate about. So we're really thrilled to have her join us tonight and hopefully kick off 2022 with some awesome goals and follow through. So I'll let Libby take it on from here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Perry. And thank you, Hive, for inviting me to do this. Goal setting workshops are something I've done a fair amount in the past. And it's always something that I leave feeling like super motivated. I think it's really nice to connect with community when you're setting intentions and kind of deciding to chase after something that you care about. And so commend you all for getting on this call or listening to the recording. I know that goal setting isn't always the most appealing of topics for some personalities. So hats off for joining and getting over that sometimes mental hurdle to decide that it's something you want to take on. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we move on. Obviously, stuff going on in life. If you're multitasking, you have to do what you have to do. If you have the ability to limit your distractions for this, I strongly encourage you to do that, whether it's shutting off your email on your browser or shutting a door, whatever you can do to give yourself this time so that you can really focus and do this work. This is 100% interactive, and you will be doing some self-reflection and some writing. So if you can make sure that you have some paper and a pen or pencil nearby, that will be important, not right at this moment, but in a few minutes. So go ahead and work on that if you need to. And then there's not a ton of us on the call, and it's really nice for me to be able to connect with those on the other side of the camera. So if you're willing, I'd love to just hand it over to each of the participants just to introduce yourself and maybe share where you are mentally with goal setting. Like, is this something like you're jazzed about, you do it every year, and this is like an excuse to have some different structure? Is this something you're feeling apprehensive about? You don't have to give a lot of words, but just something to like connect about as we embark on this little exercise that we're going to do. Sarah, are you willing to start?
You bet. Hi, Sarah Hutchinson. And I have a little bit more space in my life because my kids are teenagers. Mm-hmm. Watch out. And I love to goal set. I'm a little bit more of a vision board. So putting pen to paper isn't something that I generally do. And I have a lot of things that I've been thinking about, but nothing that I have like committed to for this year. So I feel really open tonight and really happy to be led. All right. Should I just call in the next person and then sure, they do that, or do you want to? Okay.
You muted yourself, so I'll just go. I'm Perry Hardy, and I don't typically do a lot of, I would say, like personal goals. I'll do more career oriented or like job oriented goals, but for my year ahead, I typically, at least at this stage in my life with a 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old, am just trying to keep my head above water. So, but I'm I'm excited about the process, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it.
Awesome.
Joanna?
Hi, Joanna, of course. I am excited about this. I do set goals for myself, or at least I'm reflective throughout the year. I'd say that pre-kids, I would be able to set goals and achieve them fairly consistently. I would say that my struggle right now is that the only consistency that I have is inconsistency, having an 8 and 3-year-old, especially in the time of COVID. So I'm interested in kind of shifting my lens to see, is it better to have smaller goals that I can achieve? How do I potentially plan for inconsistency and give myself grace during those times? Like, okay, Tuesdays are always my day to get things done that are for my goals. And then like my kid's homesick or something happens. And so I'm just interested in looking at goals also from a different perspective, I think, from just, kind of shifting how I've looked at them before. But I love the process. I think it's really fun because I'm just typically an optimistic person and see a lot of opportunities, but sometimes I get frustrated with the fact that I feel like I can't achieve them because, like Perry, I'm trying to keep my head above water.
Totally. Isn't it amazing like how crowded your life can get with just like the basic things that need to happen to keep a household running? And yeah, and then you add work on top of it and it's insane. Like every single week, I'm like, how is everybody doing this? How is this even possible?
Totally. And I will say one more thing is that when I think about, like, I'll have one day where I have energy and everything is clicking and the kids are in school and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get this, and this done. And then I set like goals where I sign up for a lot and then I just feel stressed and it all blows up. So anyways, that's a pattern.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
Michelle, would you like to share?
Sure, I'll be quick. One of my kids just got home, so I'm gonna turn off my video and warm him up some dinner real quick. But I'm Michelle Holbrook, and I'm just happy to. I don't usually set goals. I'm not like a goal, New Year's resolution person at all. Like I never have been. But I do try to be intentional with different aspects of my life. At least I'm trying to focus on that. And I think I found you guys on Instagram, and I know Kenzie, who did one of your speaker things last year. And so I think it popped up on Instagram that you were doing another one of these. And I was like, hey, I'll set an alarm on my phone. And if it works, I'll be here. And I'm excited to listen and learn and, set some goals or, listen to what your goals are and just be motivated through that. So happy to be here.
The stars aligned. Perfect. And Kate, I know you have a lot going on.
Yes, just had to find my mute. Yeah. So about 5 years ago, my husband and I, we started setting goals together and then having a meeting where we kind of go over the goals that we set. So we did do our 2022 goals, and it was interesting to do them this year because I a lot of times I get like really over ambitious and want to do things daily. I'm like, I'll do my meditation daily. And I'm just like, no, it's like 2 times a week is now my goal, or like 3 times a week. And I've had to really modify that. And then the first several weeks in January constantly derailed. This little guy got COVID, and it's just been like one thing after another, but getting back on track, and definitely really excited to hear some strategies of kind of how to set goals as a mom, and having a lot going on because I have a 5-month-old and a 22-month-old.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
There's 2 things that actually Joanna and Kate, you both touched on, and one is that unexpected obstacles or just like hitches in life that kids get sick or whatever. Like, how do you stay on track when you have this disruption in your life? We're going to talk about that, and also to have that self-compassion and grace. So when like you do maybe slip up on some of the things that you committed to, like how you get back on track. So we'll talk about those things for sure. And they're 100% common, and particularly for moms. And Allie and Erin, I don't know if you're able to chime in, or if you're willing to. We're just sharing kind of like where we stand mentally, emotionally with goal setting, whether, you know, it's something that you're do often or not. And all perspectives are 100% A-okay.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I go through a pretty rigorous goal setting at work every year and lead a team of 5 and help them set their goals. So I spend a lot of time on professional goals.
Mhm.
I think for me, this is more of getting out of it personal goals and goals for being a mom. And like you said, I mean, I'm 75% spending my time focusing on work goals, and then I get home and I have 1 hour, feed my baby. No, he's not a baby anymore, 1.5-year-old. And so I think it's more setting both goals as a mom, but personal goals.
100%. Yeah, we're the like we take care of ourselves last. I feel like it's a common kind of issue for moms. And so we can set goals. And even if they're just, these incremental improvements that we want for our quality of life, we can do that. And that if we don't, then it's probably not going to happen for us, frankly, because there's a million demands. So if you're taking this time to carve out and like really commit to things that you can do to, even if it's just incrementally improve your quality of life as a mom, and dedicate that to yourself, then we're going to be much better off, because we all know that the demands won't stop from outside of us. So if we're not committing and making that space for ourselves, it's not going to happen on its own. And Erin, I don't know if you're able to participate or anything like that.
Hey, yeah, sorry I was late logging on. I was putting the twins to bed.
No worries.
But this is coming at a pretty timely moment, because I kind of heard someone else mention it. It's like kids get sick, daycare is closed, all that stuff, and you get like in a rhythm of, exercising or eating well or whatever, and then it just all seems to go out the window. And that kind of happened to probably all of us in the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of my, I don't know, just overwhelm is just having toddlers and everything. And I used to be pretty organized in my life, and now I feel like I'm just kind of surviving day to day. So just trying to figure out how to like calm the craziness and get some things done.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's a crazy time. And yeah, I hope that you all will walk away. The goal is to walk away with tangible, well, for one, like literally a goal for the year that you're going to decide to work towards. We're going to basically workshop a goal. We're going to do a fair bit of kind of self-reflection before we even get to that point. But my goal for you, and I'll honor your time, will be done at 8:30. But make this really productive, and you walk away with some clarity and some tactics and strategies that you can apply daily to commit to your goals, make something happen, create a life that you love. And again, sometimes it's the teeny small things that just getting that down on paper can really make a big difference. So I'm talking like drinking enough water, like some little things that can really make an improvement to your life. We can work as small as that if you choose to make. Okay, I'm just going to back up a little bit and give a little bit of background. I loved hearing from each of you, so thank you for sharing. But the reason why I'm sitting in front of you tonight is because I've lived the practice of goal setting professionally, as many of you mentioned. Like, it's common to practice goal setting in a professional setting. I did it as a professional athlete on the US ski team, 10 years, like from literally setting goals for every single training camp that we went to every year doing an annual 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goal setting exercise, like living that for a decade of my life. And then after moving on from the US ski team, went to Dartmouth College and then started running self-esteem workshops for adolescent girls, because I really had this deep passion for equipping teenage and adolescent girls with the tools that they need to kind of navigate that tough time in life and to get out of that period in life feeling confident and whole and positive and optimistic and having clarity around what they want in life. After getting out of Dartmouth, I ended up going to law school and starting a nonprofit called ZGiRLS, where I helped design a curriculum that basically helps girls build all of the things that I just said, in addition to positive body image and communication skills and all kinds of things. So that was my life for about a half a decade, and that nonprofit still exists and runs nationwide today. But I have since moved on. I've done some life coaching and kind of culture consulting, leadership consulting, and I've authored 2 children's books, which may seem out of left field, but it's all related to my passion for skiing. And then if you read the books, you'll notice, at least in AB Skis, my first book, a thread of growth mindset, which is something that I'm really passionate about too, which is something that grownups can learn too. That's not just for kids. Anyway, so that's the background. And you'll see in my examples tonight, I published Goodnight Chairlift, my second book. Literally, it just kind of went to market within the last few weeks. I am going to use the goals that I wrote last year to publish that book as some of the examples that I provide throughout this workshop. So to give you a tangible example of like how to apply this process to something that is like pretty big and complex, though you really can literally break it down to something as small as like a health or fitness goal, which honestly, like I said, sometimes the smaller things are really where we should be putting our focus anyway. All right. I think let's just use, well, some people are on their phone. I was going to decide whether to use the chat box or not, but why don't we just share, if you're willing to unmute yourself and contribute, what you think is difficult or hard or intimidating about setting goals. Like what are some of the reasons why we may avoid it?
I'll share.
I think, sorry, go ahead,
Go
John.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm muting you, go ahead.
Okay. I'll have to call on people. Raise your hand next time and I'll call on people just so we don't get talking to each other. Sorry.
Yeah. I will say that when your plate's already full, that setting a goal feels like you're adding something else to the plate that would have extra space.
Totally. I know it's daunting. You're like, wait, how am I going to do this? One of the things that I have found is that when it's the right goal and it's an energizing goal, that it can actually, like, again, if it's energizing, it can be something that can actually fuel you in a way that instead of like taking time and energy off your plate, it actually grows your plate. So just something to think about if you're feeling that intimidation, like really, can I fit this into my life right now? Consider the energy, and like we'll talk a little bit about it, but like in your body, when you think about that goal, is it something that is actually going to kind of fuel your soul and give you more to work with in life? But thank you for that. Somebody just kind of like wave your hand if you have. Yeah, Perry.
I would say I am nervous on setting a goal because I'm a very competitive person, and I feel like sometimes if I like try and set a goal that's unattainable, then I get upset with myself that like I didn't meet that goal. And so like I just go better off with being like, well, if I do it and I don't actually like write it down or set it in person, then like at the end of the year, like I'll be happier with myself that I achieved things that I thought I would do instead of, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like the thought of failure on that is intimidating.
Oh, 100%. I feel like that's kind of the biggest and most intimidating hurdles for sure. And then also writing it down, it's like, oh, damn, like I now I have to do it, you know, and like part of you maybe doesn't sure you're like actually want to commit quite yet. So there's part of that too. Anybody else? We have a contribution on chat. Well, one, like, agreed for what Perry said, but also we often feel like we need to be succeeding in all parts of our life. So setting goals can feel daunting, 100%. And we'll talk about that as well as we move forward. So we've talked about what's hard about setting goals and maybe what might hold us back from engaging. What are some positive outcomes from setting goals? Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, like you said, that if we pick a goal that energizes us, it can give me permission to focus on it, and being intentional. I think that's where our attention goes, and then it might happen.
Totally. Joanna?
I think any challenge, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, a lot of times we get scared because it's painful, but when you have that pain, that's when the true growth happens. And then you can reflect back on it and you realize a lot of times your true strength in those moments, and being able to actually expand and grow, because we should all keep growing.
I hear that. I love that. And actually a conversation I've had with my husband recently is, I think fitness goals tend to be kind of like cliche, but for those of us in Park City who are active, it probably resonates. But he did a bike race a number of years ago that was it was a multi-day bike race and insanely challenging, but like one of the best experiences in his life. And I think we all have kind of had things in our life that we've experienced where we're like, holy crap, that was hard. But so glad that we did it. And like how much kind of gratification and confidence and energy and pride that we get out of doing something big and challenging and hard, like exiting our comfort zone and doing something we weren't sure we might actually be able to accomplish. That stuff doesn't happen on its own. Like the only way that we're going to get those experiences in life is if we say that we want to commit to a process and put ourselves out there. There may be occasions like with adversity where we're dealt a hand in life that is so hard, and we all kind of have endured various versions of that through health challenges and loss and that sort of thing. We find out like how strong we are through that. But in terms of like exiting our comfort zone on our own terms, it's a really empowering and gratifying process that just elevates your soul. And it won't happen unless you make it happen. No one's going to hand that to you. So I think that's one of the great things about goal setting too. Anybody else? One of the things that I really like about goal setting and having like a clear plan of what I want to achieve is like, if I ever get off track or fall down or things don't go the way I want, I'm feeling down, it gives me, if I have something that I know I'm committing to, it kind of like helps me like realign, get back on track, like zero in, what do I want? What am I trying to achieve? It makes getting up after falling down like a little bit easier because you know like exactly where you want to, what direction you want to head. And it just provides, I think, Sarah, I think you mentioned intention, like living intentionally and creating a life that we want to live and a life that we love. If we have that intention, we're going to actually create that for ourselves. And if it's not there, then certainly all of the notifications on our phone and other lives being lived in front of our faces and demanding our attention, all of those distractions and needs and demands are going to live our life for us. That attention grabbing from the world around us will pull us in a direction that the rest of the world wants us to go. So if we don't have our own intention on the way we want to live, then it just simply won't happen. And so we can get really clear with our intention and create what we want. This is the one life we get, right? This is our only chance. So make it beautiful. Okay, so this next kind of portion, now that we've kind of talked about what is hard, but what is good about goal setting, we're going to start to actually dive into the self-reflective process. So to give you some background, I really want you to be like, yes, you even can turn off your camera if you're feeling like self-conscious about this process. But what I really want you to do is like be willing to dive inward, to think and reflect and be honest with yourself, to write things down that might scare you, to write things down that are just total stream of consciousness. You didn't even think that you'd had that idea before and somehow it just came out of your hand. Like, just do it. I'm not going to make you show your ideas to everybody else. You don't have to act on all of the things that you write. I just want you to really kind of like let flow anything and everything that you can. Don't make it tidy. It doesn't have to be in a certain structure. Just get it out of your head through your hand onto paper. With that being said, I'm going to start my screen share. And we're going to back up to what I think is something that people tend to move past when they're doing goal setting. But in my mind, critically important. So we're going to talk a little bit about values. And I'm not going to give a lot of background on values, but I think we all are familiar with what they are. And I'm just going to simply move through some prompts. They're going to ask you questions about your own values and what matters to you. And I'd love for you to just kind of continue to jot down. If you run out of ideas, and look up at the screen and get more prompts and just keep writing. So we're going to do this for about 5 minutes and self-reflect about our own values. And then I'll explain where we're going to go from there. Okay. So you can go ahead and work as I talk. But the first prompt is just like, what are your values? Like, have you thought about this before? Were you handed down values from your family growing up? What really matters to you most? Is it wellness and health and balance? Is it hard work and integrity and honesty? Is it commitment to family or faith? Is it physical fitness or nature or personal growth? Like, there's so many things that kind of influence and guide the way we live our life, without like thinking too specifically. Like, just start to jot down the things that like really feel like they matter to you. Continue to brainstorm. I'm going to go through some other prompts that you can move on to if and when you feel ready. If you imagine yourself, maybe you've heard of this exercise before, it's nothing novel, but I think it really gets us to a place where we can reflect on what matters to us. And imagine yourself at your own funeral. You've passed away. How do you hope people will describe you in the life that you lived? You can self-reflect on the things that you do in your life when you feel most invigorated and most alive. So I know as moms, there's kind of like a lot of daily demands, at least for me. Like, I do a lot of things that actually I don't at all feel invigorated or alive doing, like grocery shopping and folding laundry and buying dog food. Like, there's just bazillion things that we're doing. But if you reflect on the things that you do in your life, even the small things, like what are the things, even if it's just minute, that you feel invigorated and alive? And if you can think about those types of things, what do they have in common, if anything? They may not necessarily have anything in common, but I know, like, for me, I feel really invigorated and alive when I do things like this, or when I used to teach yoga. So like when I provided a memorable experience and a kind of like mind expanding experience to the practitioners in the room. Out of all of the kind of mundane tasks I do as a mom, I've noticed that packing lunches is the one that, like, I still don't love doing it, but there's something about packing a lunch that it feels like a little bit less mundane. And so I have made the connection that, like, I like providing an experience to people. And when I pack a lunch for my kid, I'm making an experience for them in the meal that they have without me. So anyway, just kind of like thinking about things that you do in your life where you feel even just like a little bit like it gets your gears turning, and see if you can find that thread, if there is one, that those things have in common. I encourage you to continue to just, like, you know, let my voice float over you and brainstorm away. Just keep writing endless ideas, you know. Another prompt to consider if you get stuck. Oftentimes, particularly in relationships, when we are triggered and feel anger towards somebody else, not always, but sometimes, it could mean that the person that triggered the anger transgressed or violated something that is really important to you. I'll give you an example. I have found, and I share this with permission of my husband, and it's no longer like a huge deal, but I used to get extremely resentful when I felt like I was carrying all of the load in the household and feel angry about it. And I kind of started to put together, like, what does this anger say? If we can use our emotions as kind of like a barometer to, like, what's happening in our life. It's data, like our emotions are data. They're telling us something. So my anger, I realized, was basically telling me that he was transgressing the value that I hold, that a partnership should be equal and both parties should contribute equal amounts. And so all of that anger and resentment really just came from a value that I hold, and identifying, is this a value that I want to continue to hold? Or is it something that actually isn't serving me and you can discard? But anyway, I raise this to challenge you to consider any areas in your life, particularly relationships, that you feel like you get triggered or angry. And then consider, like, what is behind that anger? Like, what is it that's actually making you angry? And if it's a value that is transgressed, like, consider if that's a value that actually, that's a signal that you care a lot about it. And then there's also the potential that it's actually something you don't care a lot about, and then you maybe should just let it go. Okay, I'm going to give you like 30 more seconds, with the caveat that considering life values, family values, personal values, it's a pretty in-depth exercise. I don't expect you to, like, come up with a complete, comprehensive or final list of values. But I do think that it should be informative, all of the things you put down on paper. will inform as how we move forward. Okay. So now, based on everything that you've written, I want you to look back and circle the words that like really pop out at you in one way or another. Like what resonates with you? What feels like it pulls on your heart a little bit more? What feels like it kind of like is a really strong guidepost for how you want to live. And you could literally end up circling every value that you wrote on your page. But I do want you to like take the time to look back over everything that you wrote and just begin to circle those things that kind of like rise out of the page to you. And from there, if you're still working, that's fine. Take it one level farther and just put a star next to the ones that like out of the ones that you circled. Like, again, next level, like what really matters to you? Like, what do you really feel like? Ah, yeah, looking at that, like can't live without that. Nope. And those of you who are still working, like, please continue to do that. I just want to throw it or turn it back to you all and just have an opportunity to ask any questions you may have or share any observations. So as you were kind of going through that exercise, if there was anything that was hard particularly, or anything that was a pattern that kept showing up for you, or any considerations that were particularly uncomfortable or easy. Does anybody have any questions or observations to share? Allie.
Yeah, so I started out just writing initial goals, and it's simple things like drink more water and work out, like lose weight, lose more weight, try harder to lose weight. And then when you got down to the part that was like, at your funeral, how are people going to remember you? It's like, are people going to say, oh, Allie, because she was always 15 pounds overweight or 10 pounds overweight, like it's maybe that's not the most important thing. And the other things like family or loyalty, you know, adventure and friends are more important than, okay, maybe those can lead into it in a different way, but maybe losing weight isn't the most important thing.
100%. Yeah. And like, so many things to say about that. And I love the observation. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure no one at any of our funerals is going to be commenting about our physical appearance. It's going to be kind of the contributions that we made and the type of people that we were. And I don't know if everybody shares a perspective, but I feel like that's the stuff that matters. And there is a lot of self-compassion and self-love that we can offer to ourselves when and if we decide to set goals about physical health or weight. We can use a guiding principle for those types of goals if that's what we decide we want. Maybe the goal isn't so much driven by the outcome, but by the type of feeling that you want to have in your body, or the ability to go on adventures with your family and feel like your body can do everything that you want it to on those types of adventures. So it's just a totally different angle to look at kind of those more physical or fitness goals. Anybody else? Okay. All right, we're gonna switch gears. And we're gonna start to brainstorm outcome goals. This is like 100% a different type of brainstorm, right? So we're gonna start to brainstorm pretty much anything that you have ever considered might be something you want to achieve in life. It could be short term, like in the next month, it could be a year, it could be a huge life goal. This is, again, stream of consciousness, just crazy ideas, mundane ideas, any possible idea. This could be run the full gamut. Let me get through this. Okay, goals brainstorm. So we're gonna think about outcome goals. Literally, like, for instance, for me, publish a book within a year, or if you want to run a marathon, or apply for business school, something, you know, big things. It could be, I want to feel healthy in my body and strong, like I can do hike to the top of Park City without feeling fatigued, like whatever, like any type of outcome. And I'm just going to go through some prompts as you write. If you haven't started writing, just go ahead and start jotting down ideas, like literally anything that's crossed your mind. Not going to hold you accountable to a single thing that you write down. So if it sounds insane and crazy, all the more reason to write it, because this is your chance to see it on a page and see how you feel about it. And if it scares you, great. If you think it looks ridiculous, great. No one's going to make you commit to doing it. I really challenge you to literally write anything that comes to your head. And I'm just going to go through some prompts here. What do you want to accomplish this year? What is an audacious, just big life goal that in the back of your mind you've considered but never actually talked about, or even maybe even admitted to yourself that is something you think would be pretty cool? This could be not even so much like an outcome, but a way of life. Like if it's your life goal to basically to not with like basically to retire by a certain age, and that feels like completely unreasonable to you, like just write down, like, I want to be done working by age 50, something like that. So this one can be a little bit dicey in our comparative social media drenched world, but I mentioned before how our emotions can be data points. And envy, while it's an uncomfortable and often kind of considered ugly emotion, it is informative. So is there anything in your life that you kind of like it elicits that kind of sense of envy? And when I say in your life, I actually mean when you see in other people's lives something that they're accomplishing, something that they're doing, a way in which they're living, an attitude that they have, a sense of freedom that they have, the fact that they travel all the time. Do you feel envy about anything that you see out in the world? And maybe just this is where you have to be honest with yourself. Is that something that really just doesn't matter with you, doesn't align with your values that you were just writing about? Or is that informative? Is that something that you may actually care a lot about and want to chase down? I mentioned this before, but what makes you scared? Like, what is something so big that you're like, oh man, that's so big, I can't even think about it because it's scary? What makes you super excited? Getting outside every day, does that make you excited? Does taking your family on a trip make you excited? Does finding a new job or connecting with a new sense of purpose, or finding a new invigorating daily routine, does that make you excited? and inspired. What makes you what inspires you? Consider what would make the most positive change in your life right now. So a lot of times we think big things, something that like we really kind of layer on top. What are some things that you could do that would make positive change in your life? And again, it could be an attitude. I would improve my life if I felt more at ease throughout the day, through all of the responsibilities that I carry out through the day. Or it would improve my life if I spent less time in my car, like different things that could actually improve your quality of life. And then finally, what would you do if you knew for a fact that you couldn't fail? As you brainstorm, I encourage you to consider all different kind of categories of your life. So your physical health, your mental health, career. Many of you mentioned that you already do kind of career-oriented goal setting. Maybe that's something you want to set aside because this is, space for you. But if you don't do career goals, then it is something I encourage you to consider. Family life, parenting. What type of parent do you want to be? How do you want your kids to describe you when they grow to be adults? What do you want them to say about their childhoods? How do you want to be remembered by your family? What types of things do you do? Travel, self-care, community, service, friendship, intellectual pursuits, reconnecting with things that you used to do years ago, don't do anymore. Okay, I'm going to give you about 30 more seconds to continue to just jot down all of your ideas. Okay, so I encourage you, if you feel like you're still, like ideas are still flowing, I encourage you to continue this stream of consciousness brainstorm after, like, don't let me stop you. If you want to continue that, it's like just good to get everything out. But we're going to stop for now. And what I want you to do is look back at your values brainstorm. And particularly look specifically at the words that you circled and starred. And then once you kind of like refresh your memory on what those things were, look back at the goals, potential goals, the ideas that you came up with for things that you might like to accomplish in life. And see how what you wrote maps to your values. So particularly the goals that kind of like jump out at you is being like, yeah, that would be really cool. Even the big scary ones, like the ones that are like, wow, like that would be really cool. All I want you to do is just kind of like go back and forth between your values and the ideas for your goals. and see which ones like really, like what are the goals that like really embody the values that you care about? What are the ones that would advance your living a life of your values the most? Which ones fit the best to the things that you know really matter to you? We go back to that at your funeral, like how do you want people to describe you and remember you? Often those stories and memories will come from things that you've done. And so we have a choice when we write our goals and our intentions, what we want to commit to in life. Like we are creating the experiences that ultimately one day people might remember us by. You're welcome to kind of jot, circle, write notes around the goals that you brainstormed that seem particularly fitting and map to your values the best. So I mentioned at the beginning that we would be choosing one goal to workshop. So the verb workshop that we will like actually work with tonight. What I'd like you to do now is you've kind of like compared your potential goals to your values is like trying to zero in. And I know this is hard. What I'm doing by forcing you to select one goal tonight is I'm going to walk you through a process of like how we're going to workshop this single goal. It doesn't mean that you can't go back to this list of ideas and do this exact same process at another time with another goal. So don't feel like when you're picking a goal tonight that it is like the end all be all. You can apply this process to another goal at another time, literally tomorrow if you wanted. But we do need to pick a goal off of that list. And I want it to be one that fits with your values, something that feels energizing, something that feels like it would create positive change in your life right now, even if it's just a very small amount. And something that you feel like, yeah, like I want to commit to this. And what I'd like to do, maybe some of you have like already identified that single goal that you'd like to workshop tonight. Some of you may be like kind of mulling over in your mind, like, do I want to commit to that? Do I not? Like, what do I want to do? If you're willing to kind of like share your observations and your experience, we would love to hear, because we all benefit from like hearing, for instance, like I'm kind of going back and forth between using this fitness goal and this other goal that I'm actually not sure I can actually accomplish, but it feels like pretty energizing. Is anybody willing to share kind of like their thought process right now as they're considering these different options?
I can share mine.
Great.
One thing I've found increasingly difficult in my juggle of work and life is having the opportunity to like decompress from my work day and like re-engaging in my home life. And like a lot of times I'll work right to the end of the day and then come in the house and I'm very like flustered or upset or just not really present because I haven't had time to decompress from the stress of my work. And then I come into a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old like screaming and excited to see me, or like having a meltdown because they see me and their emotions are like so all over the place. And so I find that I come into my house with an energy that's very difficult for like them to deal with, me to deal with. And so I would say my goal is to like either set more time aside between work and home, or being more intentional when I do walk in the door to like try and leave that work baggage or the stressful day that I had aside.
I love that. Yeah, that would be huge. And that's I think a challenge all of us can kind of like relate to also. So some self-compassion around like what it is that you're experiencing and stuff. But yes, I can see how that like committing to something like that would be like really positive change for you and your family. So I think that's a great, awesome goal. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll carry on. There's still a fair bit to get through, and I want to make sure that we can get through the rest of this process. So I'm going to walk through, before we carry on, just a general framework for thinking about setting goals. If you're still working on picking your goal, keep doing it, half listen while you're kind of figuring out what you want to commit to. And background on this framework. So this is pulled straight from ZGiRLS and the ZGiRLS Curriculum. It's a framework that is proprietary to ZGiRLS and used for mentor training and for the girls, but it's universal. Many of you have probably heard about SMART goals, and there's a bazillion different interpretations of SMART goals. Spunky goals are what ZGiRLS set, and I'm going to talk you through very briefly, because I think a lot of you would already be familiar with a fair number of these things. When we set our goals, they need to be specific. I say cross-offable. So you need to know exactly what you're aiming for. So it can be really hard with some of these kind of like, for instance, Perry, like super hard to make that type of goal. Like, how do you know when you've accomplished arriving at your house and being fully present, calm, and at ease for your family and your children? Maybe you know you've achieved it when you've done it for a week. Maybe it's when you've been able to do it for a month. Maybe it's when your partner has noticed a difference. Like, this is challenging to make it specific, but we need to do our best to come up with something that makes it like we know when we've achieved it. Because getting strong, like I want to be strong, like how do you know, like how do you hold yourself accountable if you just want to be quote unquote strong? Like, get specific. So this is maybe a little bit new or different, but I always encourage my clients to set goals in the present and in the positive. So rather than writing goals like, I will go to the gym 3 days a week, or I'll try to go to the gym 3 days a week, you literally write it in the present tense. Like, I go to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It really does. Once you start to plug that into your brain, it's like the type of person that you are. Like, I am the type of person who goes to the gym 3 times a week. Like, it programs your subconscious to believe that it is possible now. Even if you aren't doing it 100% yet, say it in the present tense. And then write it in the positive. That's pretty intuitive, but rather than saying like, I won't eat junk food, you say, I only eat healthy foods, or I only eat foods that are from the earth, or like whatever, something that is in the positive. So if there's one thing that you walk away with tonight, it would be this, the U from Spunky, under your control. So I challenge you to come up with outcome goals, but those outcomes are exactly that, they're outcomes. And sometimes in life, we actually don't have 100% control over outcomes, but we do have 100% control over inputs and what we do. So yes, we're going to use your goal as a North Star, as a direction, as an inspiration, a destination that ideally we'd like to get. But really what matters is the daily, everyday things, concrete, that you can commit to, that are 100% under your control, that will deliver you to the outcome that you want. So that goal is inspiration and direction, but our focus is always on the everyday steps in our game plan. So an analogy from ski racing that I would often use is, if I'm standing in the start gate and all I'm thinking about is the result I want at the finish line, I'll be way too preoccupied and intimidated and distracted to get the outcome that I want. Really, where my focus needs to be is like what I'm actually going to do in this in the race course between the start and the finish. So the focus is on the things that are under your control. The N is notify someone. So we share our goals with someone, both for support and for accountability. You would be shocked how many people will rally behind you when they know what you're trying to accomplish, and they can't read your mind. They don't know what you're trying to create or the life you're wanting to live unless you tell them. And not only is it great for accountability, but again, you'd be shocked at what people will do to help make it possible for you. Keep revising. So this is where that kind of self-compassion and grace comes in. This kind of like specific is a really kind of like touchy, hard to like nail down an exact rule, but keep revising is just an acknowledgement that life happens, circumstances change, kids get sick, daycares close, injuries happen, jobs are unexpectedly lost, you know, like things happen unexpectedly. We need to be prepared and willing to adjust our goals. And not only does that mean like, you know, if you get an injury and maybe the marathon that you'd wanted to run won't be possible, but maybe you need to adjust your goals up. Like it doesn't just mean like giving yourself grace, which you 100% should. But it also means like challenge yourself. You can revise your goal to be more ambitious or more difficult if in the process you determine that it can be. When we think about kind of that self-compassion and how we can like really determine what's honest, like it's not like we revise when it gets hard, just because it's hard. We revise when it's like, when it's necessary. And how do you define that line? What I always kind of like go to as a default is how would you talk to a friend about it? So for instance, let's see. Or consider like a fitness goal where consider a friend who, yeah, just like we all know the daycare situation and how it can kind of upend life at home and how your fitness can be one of the first things that like kind of gets hit. She's experiencing like a month of that type of thing. How would you talk to her about those setbacks? Would you tell her to give up? Probably not, right? You'd give her encouragement and like encourage her to be compassionate about what happened that was out of her control, try to help her come up with a plan to move forward and get back on track with what she wants. So when it comes to determining in your life when to revise and how to revise, take that outside perspective. Like if your friend were in the same situation, how would you advise her? And there's not always a perfectly right answer. It can be tough. And then the final letter is why you've got this. I think a lot of times when we're stuck in a process, intimidated, frustrated, feeling like nothing's going our way, really easy to ignore our past successes, but really important to remind yourself, like you've done tough stuff before, you can do it again. And if you literally need to write like a list of accomplishments of tough goals that you've accomplished before and have it on your desk to remember, like you can do it, then do that. Because you really do. You have the power to accomplish what you set out to. All right. Some of you may be familiar with the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. But one of his quotes that I just love is every action that you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So when we're talking about building a game plan that will deliver us to that outcome that we want, we can go into these tiny little incremental small things that we can commit to on a daily basis that we can commit to. And every single time we do that thing, it is a vote for the type of person that we wish to become. So for instance, again, if it's a fitness goal, if it's literally just putting on your shoes or packing your bag the night before or creating a meal plan on Sunday night for the rest of the week. Like those little things, every single time you do that action, you're demonstrating to yourself and the type of person that you wish to become, and you're taking a little bit step closer. So we're going to build a game plan. I want you to think about that goal that you picked. And then we're going to work backwards and think about all of the things, again, focusing specifically on the you of Spunky under your control that you can do, that you can commit to, that will deliver you to the outcome that you want. So I would encourage you to just start writing your game plan. It could be 5 steps, it could be 10 steps, it could be 50 steps. But what are the things, like try to think very comprehensively of all the things that you can do that will advance you toward that outcome that you want. And as you work, I'll just talk you through an example because sometimes it can be helpful to kind of get that context. So for me, about this time last year, again, I mentioned that I decided I wanted to publish a children's book and the timeline was pretty tight. So I came up with a really specific game plan. And all of these things that I wrote here are examples of things that I committed to make this goal possible. So I decided I would write for 2 hours at a certain time of day, every single weekday. You'll notice that these are in the present and in the positive. They're specific, they're giving a time stamp. I send a copy of my manuscript to my editor every other week. Giving deadlines to yourself. Again, maybe you need to revise at some point, but give yourself a deadline because it'll give you something to hold yourself to and something you can cross off. So I send a copy of my manuscript to my editor every other week. I finish my manuscript by May 1st. I hire a videographer and shoot a promo video by May 31st. I build a Kickstarter page by June 12th. And then there were countless other steps. You get the idea. So we're setting spunky goals, things that you can commit to under your control, and get creative. So ways that you can make things specific can be accomplished like through a calendar, like certain number of times a week, certain time of day, with a certain person, like a workout buddy, or I have an accountability phone call with my friend on the 3rd Thursday of every month. I find a therapist by February 15th. I researched the programs at 10 different schools by May 1st. I asked 5 people for feedback by the end of August. I revisit this game plan every single morning. I take a deep breath before I walk in the door and stop and plant my feet before I move. I remind myself of my values every time I brush my teeth. I reach out to one friend every month, even if I don't feel like it. I block out 1 hour on my calendar every week and never let anything get scheduled into that hour. And I use that hour for X. When we're considering these actions under our control, a lot of this comes down to behavior change, which is a complicated topic that you could study. You could read all kinds of books about behavior change. But a few tips, especially for things that you think might be kind of sticky and challenging for you to break habits or to integrate something new into your life. Creating disincentives for habits that don't serve you or actions that don't serve you, or even eliminating the possibility. So the kind of the cliche one is like, you're not going to eat cookies if you don't have them in the house. Like, don't set yourself up to be tempted by the cookies in the pantry if you want to eat only healthy foods. You can even set up, obviously rewards can be very positive. So if you can build a reward into your life, like, I don't know why I always think of like getting coffee, but it's like, after I write for 2 hours, then I can buy myself a coffee. So like building in kind of incentives and rewards. And then finally, pairing new habits or new behaviors that you want to integrate into your life with things that already happen in your life. So for instance, you think about brushing your teeth, like that's a habit. We somehow, we've incentivized ourselves to like brush our teeth every day. If we can do that, we can create all kinds of other habits too. Think about the habits that you have in your day that you can pair a new action with. So for instance, if living within a certain intention is very important to you, then find a habit, like every time I put my shoes on at the back door, I remind myself of a certain value that matters to me, or a way of being that I want to carry myself at work. Or because brushing teeth is like something that we know everybody does, like, is there something that you can pair? Like literally, one thing that I've integrated in my life is I do school drop off, and I also really benefit from meditation. So I found that I do not meditate unless I like build it into my life. And one thing that I've been doing lately is literally just right after drop off, parking my car somewhere and meditating for 5 minutes, because if I get home, I'm going to get pulled into something else. Like I pair it with the drop off, like the drop off happens every day, and I don't let myself do the next thing until I've done that new habit. And then also another note about rewards. So if there's something that you really enjoy doing, and then there's a new habit that might be difficult for you to integrate, a new behavior, can you pair it with something that you enjoy? So for instance, if there's a podcast that you really love, and you really want to get more time on the stationary bike or the trainer, can you only allow yourself to listen to that podcast when you're riding the bike? So you get this reward of something that you really like, while you're also building a new habit that advances you towards the outcome that you want. So these are all just examples. of things that you can do. You kind of have to get creative and think out of the box. All right, so maybe you have a lot more you could build into your game plan that you can work on more after the call. But with 15 minutes left, actually 10 minutes left, we're gonna work on the final step, which is to forecast our obstacles, because we all know that they will arrive. You know yourself best, you know your patterns. So not only do we have, the things that are out of our control, daycare closure, etc., but we also know like our tendencies, our procrastination, all of our wiggly excuses that we make to get out of things. Like, you know yourself best. Forecast all of your problems that may come up and hinder you in the process of achieving your goal. This next slide actually is a little bit out of place, but it's just meant to illustrate a different way that a game plan can look. So this is my game plan for the last year of publishing my book. And because there are so many parts and moving pieces and I'm visual, I just created this grid where basically I could categorize all the different things that I needed to accomplish, and then all of the micro steps underneath there that needed to be done in order to get to the end goal. So there's a lot when you're tackling like a big, complicated goal. Obviously, we really need to break it down into those things under our control. And this is just the way that I happen to do it, but I wanted to provide that as an example. Okay, so back to those obstacles. I want you to think about what might get in your way of accomplishing that game plan. So maybe not the end outcome. We're literally talking about that game plan. Like, what are the things that you're saying you're going to do? And what are the things that could prevent you from doing it? So go ahead and start thinking about your potential obstacles. I'm going to talk you through, again, my example. So this is from the last year. I forecasted and was very accurate in my prediction that other family household responsibilities would kind of take over my time to write. That's like the easiest thing for me to let happen, is that other things crowd out what I want to accomplish. So for example, for every single obstacle, we're going to come up with 3 things. It's basically our response plan. Like when we meet this goal, not if we meet this obstacle, when we meet this obstacle, we will do these 3 things. And I did this, this first one in advance. So I shared my goal to write 2 hours a day with my husband. I got him to agree that on any weekday that I'm not successful in getting my 2 hours in, that he'll work with me to ensure that I have uninterrupted time at night. If I'm having trouble getting my time to write, I go straight to a coffee. I get into the habit of going straight to a coffee shop to write after I drop off the kids. I'd never go home, and before that, I don't check email before that. I can't do anything else until I get that 2 hours in. I taped my game plan on the wall right next to my desk, so I'm reminded every day of my goals. So these are just things like, this is a response. Is like, I think that this is probably going to get in my way. These are the things I'm going to do if and when this obstacle arises. So we're forecasting our obstacles, coming up with an action plan of how we will respond if and when that obstacle arises. So the other, things that I forecasted would get in my way were that my illustrator would not stick to his timeline. I had a game plan for like how to check on him and getting outcomes from him that were on a timeline that would work for me. Open and honest communication about that type of thing. So there's things that I could do, even though I couldn't control if my illustrator actually carried out his end of the deal. I could do things that would minimize a chance that he failed to stick to his timeline. And there are endless other obstacles, but I'm not going to give any more examples. See if you can forecast 3 obstacles, and for each obstacle, at least 2 or 3 actions that you can take to overcome the obstacle. Call a friend. Like when I'm feeling lazy, I send a text to so-and-so. And again, you'll notice I'm still saying it in the present. We're not saying like, if I feel lazy, it's like when I feel lazy, when I feel like it's not going to serve me, I text a friend. When I feel like I'd rather sit on the couch, I go up to the fridge and physically read my goals and my inspiration, and I put on my shoes. When I learn that my kid has had a COVID exposure, the first thing I do is brainstorm the 3 people who I can ask for help. When my kid has a COVID exposure, I put an auto reply on my email that says I may be slower to reply to work email. When daycare is closed, my partner knows that they're responsible for all shopping and meal prep. So I have time to do X and Y. So with 3 minutes left, there's just a couple more things that I wanted to touch on before we sign off. If you are still working on forecasting your obstacles and coming up with an action plan for each of them, I really encourage you to finish that process, because I think a lot of us know that this is like the crux of it often. No game plan goes perfectly. And so we're much more likely to be successful in reaching the end outcome that we want if we are prepared for the glitches, for the interruptions, for the distractions, for the procrastination, and all of the other ways that we will figure out how to kind of get out of our commitment to do a certain thing. This is like the meat. So I really hope that you don't skim over it or and put some thought into how you can set yourself up for success. So as we consider kind of moving on, we're gonna like all go our separate ways. This is always a painful part for me, because like I want to hear what you guys are doing and wish I could continue to be a part of your process, and we can, of course, if we choose. But I want to send you off on the best possible foot. And so I'd like to challenge you right now to consider and write down who you're going to notify. So if we're going to write spunky goals, the N is for notify. Who are you going to share your goal with? And I also encourage you to write down by when and commit to it. So maybe it's literally tonight. You get off this call and you walk and tell your partner what you want to achieve. And then secondly, it is possible that somewhere in your game plan, there was something that you could literally do tonight. Like we hit end meeting and shut our laptops or put down our phones. What can you do tonight to set this in motion, to get a little bit of inertia, a little bit of momentum to move you forward literally tonight? And if you can't think of something, it could literally be, you know, I'll send myself a 3-word email that I'll read in the morning that says the goal or what you want to enter into your calendar. You know, like maybe it literally is like I block off 2 hours of my calendar to do X and Y. But I encourage you to come up with something literally right now. What can you do tonight when we end this meeting to set this in motion? I think there's something in chat. Just one sec. Hopefully it's not from forever ago. Awesome. Okay, it's 8:30. I want to give you all a chance to carry on with your life. I saw some yawning, so I hope it wasn't too incredibly boring, and that everyone gets a really restful night's sleep, because we all deserve it. My website, you can contact me through the contact page on my website if you're feeling like you want to follow up with me or have any questions. I love this kind of stuff, and I encourage you to do so. If there's anything I can do to help hold you accountable, I encourage you to reach out and use me as a resource. I'm going to let you all go, and we can all go off mute and say a heartfelt goodbye and good night. Thanks to Hive for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all. And I am 100% cheering for you. I think you all are amazing women, and I'm glad to be in community with you. So good luck and kick ass. I can't wait to hear how you all do in achieving your goals.